I have buried friends. I have watched marriages crumble. I have seen brilliant people shrink themselves into nothing, trying to be everything for everybody else. And I have done it too. For decades, I did it too. So when I tell you what I'm about to tell you today, understand, this is not theory. This is not something I read in a book. This is the hard, costly, irreversible truth that took me 75 years to finally say out loud, nobody is coming to save you. And until you choose yourself, truly choose yourself, you cannot fully love your children, your partner, or anyone else. I have to be honest with you about something I am not proud of. I raised children when I was running on empty. Not because I didn't love them. God knows I love them more than my own breath. But because I had convinced myself that a good parent disappears into their family. That the more of yourself you gave away, the better father or mother you were. And for years, decades even, I believed that. I lived that. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor. But here is what nobody tells you when you are in the thick of raising children and building a life and trying to hold everything together at once. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and I don't mean that as a cute saying you put on a coffee mug. I mean it as a warning, as a confession from a man who poured and poured and poured until there was nothing left inside him but dust and quiet resentment he didn't even know how to name. I showed up physically, yes. I was at the dinner table. I was at the school plays. I drove them to practice and sat in the cold bleachers and clapped. But I was hollow inside. My mind was somewhere between yesterday's argument and tomorrow's worry. My children were not getting me. They were getting the shell of me, the leftover, worn-down, scraped-clean version of a man who had given his best hours to everything and everyone except himself. And the painful truth, the one that took me far too long to face, is that children feel that. They may not have the words for it when they are young, but they feel it in their bones. They feel when a parent is present but not there. They feel the tension underneath the smile. They absorb the exhaustion you never speak out loud, and slowly, quietly, they begin to believe that love is supposed to look like sacrifice to the point of disappearance. That is not love. That is a slow collapse dressed up as devotion. Choosing yourself first is not selfishness. It is the most generous, the most courageous, the most loving thing you will ever do for your family. A parent who is whole, who is rested, who is at peace, who knows their own worth, raises children who grow up believing they are worth wholeness too. And this brings me to something that I wish someone had sat me down and said plainly without softening it, without wrapping it in gentle language to protect my feelings. Because I needed to hear it hard. And maybe you do too. Your children are watching you. Every single day they are watching you, not listening, watching. There is a difference, and it is everything. You can sit your daughter down and tell her she is worthy of respect. You can look your son in the eyes and tell him to stand tall, to believe in himself, to never shrink for anyone. You can say all the right things. You can read every parenting book ever written and deliver the most beautifully crafted words a child has ever heard. And then they will walk out of that room and watch you say yes when every part of you means no. They will watch you swallow your opinion at the dinner table to keep the peace. They will watch you cancel the one thing you were looking forward to all month because somebody else needed something. And without a single word being spoken, the lesson is delivered. Loud, clear, permanent. I know this because I lived it from both sides. I watched my own father disappear himself for 30 years. Watched him hand over his dreams quietly, without complaint, like it was simply what a man was supposed to do. He never told me to do the same. He never sat me down and said, "Son, make sure you abandon yourself for others. He didn't have to. I watched him do it, and I became him. And then my children watched me do it, and I saw the same quiet resignation beginning to form behind their eyes. That look that says, this is just how life works. You give until there is nothing left. That look broke something open in me, because here is what I understand now, standing on this side of 75 years. Children do not do what we say. They become what we are. They are not studying our instructions. They are studying our choices, the way we carry ourselves when life is hard, the way we respond when our needs go unmet, the way we either honor ourselves or quietly abandon ourselves in the name of keeping everyone else comfortable. So when you choose yourself, when you draw a boundary, when you pursue something that fills you, when you say, I matter too, and mean it, you are not being selfish in front of your children. You are teaching them the most important lesson they will ever learn. Now I want to talk about something that kept me trapped longer than anything else. Longer than fear, longer than doubt, longer even than the opinions of other people. And that thing, that invisible chain that wrapped itself around every good intention I ever had, was guilt. The moment I tried to do something for myself, it was there. Every single time, without fail. I would decide to take a walk alone, just an hour to clear my head, and the voice would start. You should be home. Your family needs you. Who sits in a park when there are things to be done? I would think about going back to something I once loved, a hobby, a quiet passion I had set aside years ago, and the voice would get louder. That is selfish. That is irresponsible. Good parents do not think about themselves like that. And I would put it back down. Every time. I would fold myself back up and slide back into the shape that everyone around me had grown comfortable with. The shape of a man who needed nothing. And for years I thought that voice was wisdom. I thought it was my conscience keeping me honest, keeping me responsible, keeping me the kind of person worthy of the family I had been given. I trusted it completely. But here is what I know now that I did not know then. That voice was not wisdom. That guilt was not truth. It was conditioning. It was decades of messages absorbed from a world that profits from your smallness. From parents who were themselves never allowed to choose themselves. From a culture that confused self-sacrifice with virtue and called exhaustion a sign of good character. That guilt was handed to me long before I ever had children of my own, and I carried it faithfully, never once stopping to ask whether it actually belonged to me. Because guilt, real guilt, exists to correct genuine wrongdoing. It is a compass, not a permanent residence. But the guilt that arrives simply because you dared to take up space, dared to rest, dared to say not today to one more demand on your already depleted spirit. That guilt is not guiding you toward anything good. It is simply keeping you small. And a small parent raises children who believe smallness is what love requires. I needed someone to tell me that, plainly, firmly, with enough conviction that it could cut through 50 years of programming. So I am telling you now, challenge that voice. Question it. Because the freedom waiting on the other side of that guilt is not just yours to claim. And once you begin to loosen the grip of that guilt, once you start to question the voice that told you your needs don't matter, something else becomes possible. Something that I spent the better part of my life misunderstanding completely. And that is the idea of boundaries. Now, when most people hear that word, they flinch. I did too. For the longest time, boundaries felt cold to me, clinical, like something you built between yourself and the people you loved, like a wall. And I thought, what kind of father builds walls around himself? What kind of husband draws lines in his own home? So I never did. I stayed open in the way that a wound stays open, available to everyone, protected by nothing, and slowly, quietly bleeding out in ways I could not even see. What I did not understand then, and what took me far too long to learn, is that a boundary is not a wall. A boundary is a bridge. It is the thing that makes genuine connection possible in the first place. Because you cannot truly meet someone when you are performing for them. You cannot really be present with your children when you are silently seething underneath a smile, when you have said yes so many times against your own will that every yes now carries a hidden weight of resentment neither you nor they can quite explain. I watched what happened in my home when I had no boundaries. I was unpredictable in the way that overloaded things become unpredictable. Calm on the surface, pressure building underneath, and then something small, something that should have meant nothing, would crack it open. A tone of voice, a small inconvenience, a question asked at the wrong moment. And my family would look at me with that careful, watchful look that told me they never quite knew which version of me was going to walk through the door. That look haunts me still. But when I finally began to say no with love, began to communicate what I needed instead of just absorbing what everyone else needed, something shifted in that house. The air changed. My children stopped walking on eggshells because I stopped being a man held together by nothing but sheer endurance. My relationships became honest for the first time. Not easier necessarily. Honest. And honest is so much more valuable than easy. A parent without boundaries is a parent without peace. And children raised without witnessing healthy limits grow into adults who spend decades learning the hard way what you could have shown them simply by living it. And I want to stop here for a moment, because I know what some of you are thinking right now. I can almost hear it. You are sitting there nodding along, feeling the truth of everything we have talked about. And then somewhere in the back of your mind, a quieter, heavier thought is forming. It sounds something like this. It is too late for me. Maybe you are 50. Maybe you are 60. Maybe your children are already grown and out of the house, and you are looking back at the years behind you with a kind of grief that does not have a clean name. And that voice is telling you that this conversation, as true as it may be, simply arrived too late to do you any good. I need you to hear me very carefully right now. That voice is lying to you. I was 63 years old the first time I said no to something without apologizing for it. 63, not 25, not 40. 63 years of living before I finally drew a line and stood behind it without immediately rushing to explain myself, to soften it, to make everyone around me comfortable with my own decision. And when I did it, when I finally let that no stand on its own without dressing it up in 100 qualifications, I wept. Not from sadness, not from regret. Though there was plenty of that nearby. I wept because for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt the particular lightness of a man who had just put down something extraordinarily heavy. I felt free. At 63 years old, I felt free for the first time. And I want that for you. I want it desperately for you. But I also want to be honest with you in the way that only someone my age can be honest. With the kind of clarity that comes from standing at this end of a life and looking back across all of it without the cushion of unlimited time remaining. Do not wait. Please, do not wait until the ache in your knees reminds you every morning that the years are no longer abstract. Do not wait until the house is quiet in a way that feels less like peace and more like absence. Do not wait until you are sitting where I am sitting, knowing what I know, wishing you had given yourself permission 30 years earlier to simply be a full human being inside your own life. The best time to choose yourself was the day you were born. The second best time is today, this moment. Not after the children are settled. Not after the finances improve. Not after things calm down. because things do not calm down. Life does not hand you a quieter season as a reward for waiting. You have to choose yourself inside the noise, inside the mess, inside the beautiful chaos of whatever season you are in right now. So we have talked about the empty cup. We have talked about what your children are truly learning by watching you. We have walked through the guilt and named it for what it really is. We have talked about boundaries and what they actually build rather than what they take away. And we have talked about time, about the urgency of now, about not waiting for a quieter season that may never come. And I want to bring all of that together here in this final thought, because everything we have covered today points to one single truth that I believe with every fiber of what remains of this 75-year-old life. Choosing yourself does not make you a worse parent. It makes you the parent your children have always needed you to be. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because the world has spent a long time telling you the opposite. It has told you that good parents dissolve, that good parents are tireless, that good parents push their own hunger down far enough that nobody ever has to witness it. And so you have been trying, genuinely, earnestly trying, to love your children by making yourself smaller. And I understand that impulse completely. It comes from a real place. It comes from love. But love misdirected still misses. There is a version of you that your children have not yet fully met. A version that has slept enough to actually be present at the breakfast table. A version that has pursued something meaningful enough to sit with a quiet joy underneath the ordinary moments of the day. A version that has said no enough times to the wrong things that the yes you give your family actually means something. That version of you laughs more easily, loses patience less, listens better, not because you are trying harder, but because you are not carrying the invisible weight of a self that has never been chosen. That is the parent waiting on the other side of this decision. Not a perfect parent, not a parent without struggle or failure or hard days, but a whole parent, a parent who models for their children through the simple daily act of living that human beings are worthy of their own care, that you do not have to earn the right to exist fully inside your own life, that choosing yourself is not the enemy of loving others. It is the very foundation that makes loving others sustainable, genuine, and real. Your children are not looking for a parent who gave everything until there was nothing left. They are looking for a parent who chose themselves, and in doing so, finally had something lasting, something real, something whole to give. And if this entire conversation has stirred something in you today that you are not willing to put back to sleep, then you are exactly who Evergreen Wisdom was built for. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and remember that the most powerful thing you will ever do for your family begins the moment you decide that you matter too. 75 years on this earth has taught me many things, but none more important than this. The relationship you have with yourself sets the temperature for every relationship in your home. When you are at war with yourself, your family lives in that war. When you are at peace with yourself, your family breathes easier. Parenting is not about perfect sacrifice. It is about wholeness. So I am asking you, as someone who learned this far too late, make the choice today, not for yourself alone, but for every child who is watching you decide whether they too are allowed to matter. Choose yourself, and in doing so, you will finally, truly be choosing them.